I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
Okay, so it's our hottest Wolves takes weekly edition of Flagrant Howls here. But we've got some juicy, reckless speculation that will launch us into at least my first hottest Wolves take. We got the sports dad, Judd Zulgad, producer Declan, Phil Mackey here. And I was at Bricksworth yesterday, actually, for, a couple hours, hanging out with Cooper and the crew over there. If you haven't stopped by Bricksworth in the North Loop before or even after a Timberwolves game or for a road game, you are missing out. This is absolutely one of the go-to places with some of the best beer in the entire state of Minnesota. And the North Loop location, super close to Target Center. You can just walk over there. There's also cheaper parking options. You can just walk a couple blocks up, and you're super close to a bunch of great restaurants also in and around the area too. If you want to bounce around, maybe grab a little snack and a beer at Bricksworth. I mean, it's just centrally located, incredible. And it was fun hanging out there for a couple hours yesterday. They got the signature Nas Reed Hazy IPA as well. So it has become the place to be before Wolves games in the North Loop. Bricksworth, check them out. There's also the OG location in Burnsville. And just right at kitty corner across the street from there is Element Hotel. Maybe you're coming in from out of town as a Wolves fan or just looking to have a fun weekend or a night in the downtown area. Element Hotel, a Marriott Bonvoy hotel, just steps away from Target Center and Target Field. Super walkable to Bricksworth and to other places in Minneapolis. Bright natural lighting, city views, just an awesome, centrally located, great hotel in the heart of Minneapolis. You get a 15% room rate discount when you go to scorenorth.com/element. That is scorenorth.com/element to get that 15% room rate discount. Were you guys as sort of floored and shocked as I was when you saw the first account that I saw aggregate this was Legion Hoops, and they are citing, I just pulled up his website here, a media member named, I think it's Jerry Wolfel from, and he's got his own website, wolfelpressbox.com, Pro Basketball Writers Association award winner. He's won a bunch of other awards. I'm not trying to disrespect. I've never heard of him before, but he's got 9,000 followers on Twitter, and a bunch of prominent people in the NBA world follow him. And he reported that before Luka was traded to the Lakers, the Mavs attempted to trade Luka to the Bucks and or Timberwolves for Giannis or Anthony Edwards. Before I even give my hottest take, how does that land with you?
Well, first of all, I think it's BS. I don't think that they did. But second of all, it doesn't land well. And if they did indeed, which by the way means that the flaw in the report is that everything before this has indicated that they only dealt with one team and they didn't want this out. If they had truly shopped him, it would have gotten out. But it doesn't land because the answer to me is no. Like, I'm not trading Ant. No way.
Love Luka. But no, I could not make that trade. But the fact, that the Luka for Anthony Davis trade happened, and maybe if this has validity to it, it'd be nuts. Because Mavs fans were obviously crushed. They still are crushed. They're getting thrown out of the damn arena, for God's sakes, for saying fire the GM. But, if they landed Anthony Edwards, and then also if the Wolves got Luka, how would Wolves fans react to this?
Dude, this kind of gets to the heartbeat of what Kyle Tighe was saying, I think it was a week and a half ago on the Monday State of the Wolves, that, yeah, you want your team to win a championship, and that's, the most important thing is to be really good and win a championship. But there is a certain element when it comes to being a fan of the emotional attachment you have to some players. Now, I would argue, Karl Anthony Towns, for example, I know that some fans were emotionally attached. Also, when you would listen to the cheers inside the arena, it felt to me like fans were more emotionally attached to Anthony Edwards, Nas Reed, and maybe even Luka Garza, who got the third most applause. But when you're here for 8 or 9 years and you're like 29, maybe going to be 30 years old, and you haven't really come all that close to winning a championship, like, okay. The shock factor, though, of a 26-year-old player or a 25-year-old player, or in the case of Ant, a 23-year-old player that you feel like there's still a future to maybe build around and win a championship, I see why fans were so upset. Here's the exact excerpt from this article, by the way, from WolfelsPressbox.com. My curiosity prompted me to contact several NBA officials and garner their feedback on the seismic trade. To my utter surprise, some of those officials flat out disputed Nico Harrison's comments that he strictly communicated with just the Lakers. According to 2 NBA officials, the Mavs had interactions with at least 2 other teams besides the Lakers. These officials claimed the Mavs had conversations with the Milwaukee Bucks and Minnesota Timberwolves. It doesn't take a genius to figure out which players from those teams would have piqued the Mavs' interest. That's where he speculates a little on like Anthony Edwards and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So here's my hottest take, and you guys tell me if you agree or disagree. I think there's only one player in the entire NBA that I would 100% trade Anthony Edwards for. There's 2 or 3 other players, Luka included, that I would hem and haw on, and I would be convinced to get into a deep discussion, and maybe you could twist my arm. But I think right now, if you said 23-year-old Anthony Edwards, and look at like his offense is unlocking even more now in the last month and a half. I mean, he really is becoming one of the premier scorers, playmakers in the league. The defense when he turns it on. I think Wemby is the only player right now. If you said straight up, who would you trade Anthony Edwards for? I would take the 7'4", 230-pound unicorn, best defensive player in the league, shoots threes. He's younger. He's less expensive for the next few years, and he is headed for absolute superstardom. Beyond that, Jokic is 30. I'm not trading a 23-year-old Anthony Edwards for a 30-year-old. I know obviously Jokic is a better player. Obviously Giannis is a better player right now. But Giannis is 30. Jason Tatum, I don't know that I'm trading Anthony Edwards straight up for Jason Tatum. The only 2 other guys that I would like, all right, I will hear your case on it, are Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who you're going to get a lot of looks at here in the next 2 weeks. 3 games against them for the Timberwolves. And Luka is also in that sort of, all right, you guys kind of dismissed it out of hand. I will listen to a conversation on Luka and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But the only player in the league, you tell me if it's a hot take, that I would straight up trade Anthony Edwards for right now, zero hesitation, is Wemby.
I think it's like, I don't know if that's a hot take, because that trade actually, like, at least that's a discussion. They're both young. They're both really, really good and have established themselves. So I don't know that that's a hot take in and of itself, because that trade would make, like, it wouldn't happen, but it would make some sense. But, you know, to me, the Luka portion is, I just, like, the Mavericks have done everything wrong. So I'm not going to defend them for 1 second. But the reality is this. Their concerns that have leaked out aren't without some merit. So I would hang up on the Mavericks because Ant is 23. He's a little bit more, as we've discussed a lot, immature than we would like, okay? But you never question his conditioning. You never question, I mean, the guy wants to play in every game. He literally sits out when he's sick or hurt, which in today's league is not absolutely the norm. So, like, if you call me and say, you know, Doncic is available for Ant, I'm like, okay, but he still has some very big red flags, including his gut at times. So I don't think it's a hot take to say Wemby for Ant is a definite discussion and probably is a trade that if you're the Wolves, you make. But like the Doncic thing to me is a very simple no.
I would say it's a hot take, because I think if I'm thinking of this from the ESPN NBA panel of people. If Phil was on that panel, which I'd love to see one day, and he said I'm only trading Anthony Edwards for Wemby, And I can see Kendrick Perkins and everyone else lighting up saying, what about Jason Tatum? What about Shea? What about Joker? I can see people being like, dude.
Yeah.
There's age things. I get where he's coming from.
Joker obviously is a better player right now than Ant. But the 7-year gap in age, we're talking about a 7-footer who's 250 pounds on those feet and legs. For what's he going to be in 2 or 3 years?
And keep in mind too, like this is one where I think that if you trade Ant in the conference for an aging player, he's going to come back and beat your ass. Ordinarily, you might not care about the division stuff or the conference stuff, but do you really want to have 3 more years where Joker's really good and then he tails off and Ant spends the next 10 years kicking your ass? To me, that's an easy no.
The SGA, the Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is one because he's oddly, he's not, because he plays in Oklahoma City. He has a name that's hard to pronounce for casual fans, maybe. He's not the marquee face of the NBA. Maybe he should be, but he's 26 years old. He's the NBA scoring leader, averaging 33 points a game. He's efficient. He shoots 53% from the field. He's a playmaker on offense and defense. And he still has probably 6 years of prime play left too. But people are just he's not quite on that household name level of Joker and Doncic and some of these other guys. But yeah, I mean, if you said right now, if you had Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is a better, more honed, consistent player on a nightly basis than Anthony Edwards is. And Ant is one of the top 10 or 12 in the league. But because SGA is a little bit younger, I would consider that straight up swap too.
So the Ringer updated their top 100 players. So Anthony Edwards is 11th in their latest one they did 2 weeks ago that they updated for top 100 players. The guys above him quickly. Jalen Brunson. I would not trade Ant for Jalen Brunson. Mm-mm. Anthony Davis, no. Steph Curry, no.
Nope.
Kevin Durant, no.
Nope.
Wemby is 6. So Phil's point of Wemby. Wemby's up here at 6. Tatum 5. Luka 4. Shea 3. Giannis 2. Joker 1. I can see, if you're asking me, Shea, Luka, or Tatum, I want to build around Ant, of course. I would entertain those 3 and Wemby every single time.
Those are discussions. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Those are discussions.
I'm out on Doncic. I'm out completely. I'm not trading Ant for him. No way.
But Doncic is a better and more needle moving player than Ant is right now.
Correct.
And he's only 26.
Correct, but
So it's a discussion in my opinion. You are saying it's not a discussion.
I'm saying that the Mavericks' underlying reasons for trading him are I think they have handled this horribly and they've screwed it up from the get-go. But their underlying concerns are exactly right, and their underlying concerns do not apply to Ant. I would far prefer to see Ant, because Ant can mature, right? I think Doncic is going to, or has at times, basically, because he's so talented, I think he takes, hey, I can go do this, I can go do that, I can eat 18 helpings of this, give me 6 beers. If you live my life, I don't want you on my basketball team.
But I think all those things you just said about Luka 100% apply to Ant. He's fixed his conditioning and he's fixed this stuff, but I think those concerns you have about Ant, I know the weight thing and that stuff with Luka is different. I think those exact arguments could be used against Anthony Edwards too, from not reaching his peak or being the franchise player that he's supposed to be.
He's 23 though. I've got more faith that he can, and plus, I think Luka. Here's the difference. I think Ant works his ass off. He literally, and we've seen this and heard this and read this. Every offseason, this guy goes in the gym and diligently works on a point of his game that's not great. I don't know that I see that. I think that Doncic is just one of these guys who is spectacular athlete, spectacularly talented, but he's also 26 now? Phil, is that what you said?
He'll be 26 at the end of the month.
Okay, the age difference there, a
couple years.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, if the Mavericks had handled this right, I think that there would be a lot more empathy towards what they were going through, but they didn't, and so they look like complete jerks right now. When some of their reasoning, if they had done it right, was not bad, but They did. So
what's
screwed.
crazy is if you were to play this exact game with Anthony Davis, like if think when Anthony was still on the Lakers a couple weeks ago.
Sure.
If we were to do this episode, Lakers, I have to come up with a catchy podcast name like Flagrant Howls for whatever the Lakers podcast is. But how many players would you trade Anthony Davis for straight up? And that list is a lot longer because of his age, his injury history. And if you were to do this exercise 2 weeks ago and get to the Anthony Edwards portion of it would be laughable. And then you'd get to the Luka Doncic. Would you trade Anthony Davis straight up for Luka Doncic? It's a laughable discussion from that perspective.
Yes.
Which is the biggest indictment. All the things that you said and that are kind of leaking out negative PR against Luka might be true. That, okay, maybe he doesn't take it as seriously as he needs to. Maybe he does drink too many beers in the offseason. He's out of shape. He's injured too often. All those things. Yeah. And also, trading him straight up for Anthony Davis is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the timing of it, like the whole thing is just super, super weird. I will say this: if we turn back the clock, though, here's an intriguing one. If the Wolves hadn't traded Cat, and you could have put together a package for Luka to Dallas in a
would
Cat
they have
trade.
rather have had? See, I think based on what Dallas has said, I think they value Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is a much better defensive big than Cat, and you could say Cat has more of an offensive bag because he's more range. He can shoot. But if defense is what they were interested in, Anthony Davis probably still would have been higher up on that list. But like, it's a good question. What if it was like Cat plus something else? I don't know.
That's a conversation.
Well, yeah,
I would have had that
one. I mean, that'd be theft. I mean, could you imagine
I would have
trading
thrown something in actually too.
Oh God, yeah. Literally take almost anything you want, and if your franchise is Luka plus Ant, and then figure out the rest, it's crazy. So, anywho, all right, and maybe I'm sure people have opinions in the Flagrant Howls /SKOR North YouTube channel comment section. How many players would you trade Anthony Edwards for straight up in the league right now?
I just appreciate a report from a guy that prior to Tuesday I had never heard of in my entire life. But just caused a great conversation.
That's great. Old Jerry Wolf.
He's won a bunch of awards. He's like, what other awards did I win?
Dex, what is your hottest Timberwolves take?
Yeah, let's go back to the ownership front because we had a big conversation on Monday about this, and we've even now seen some dissection of stability and be careful what you wish for with new ownership. I'm going to say this, and this is, I think, a pretty damn hot take. Alex Rodriguez and Marc Lore are going to be the best owners in Minnesota sports in the next 3 years. They're going to dethrone the Wilfs. The Twins, we're in wait and see. It might be just Nish, but we don't know. Craig Leopold, I actually think, is a really solid owner and maybe isn't talked about enough, but not necessarily the one that like you build a statue of, but knowing the Wild, they could absolutely do that. I think when you look at what A-Rod and Lore are going to really bring here to the Wolves, which is new blood, and they've hired Tim Connolly, and I know there's the snake oiliness of A-Rod, and Marc Lore might be the better kind of business guy, and A-Rod's maybe the face of things. I think what they're going to build here is going to be completely different than what we're used to as Minnesota Timberwolves fans. And just look at the state of the NBA. We just spent 20 minutes talking about a Luka for Anthony Edwards trade. I think what they're going to implement, what they're going to do for this fan base over the next 3 years, they will surpass the Wilfs, which, by the way, are damn good owners.
It's a high bar. The Wilfs are a pretty high bar.
I can't go there.
Very high bar.
I
think they're going to dethrone them. I guess, like, write that down, world. Like, what do we quantify as dethroning the Wilfs?
Who would win in a fight if Marc Lore and Mark Wilf stepped into an octagon?
If they all took their actual liquid currency into a fight, like if it was dollar bills, hundreds, thousands being thrown, I'm taking the Wilfs.
What do you mean, like who has more money, or what do you mean? We got Michael Bloomberg over here now.
Yeah,
we got more capital on the Wolves side.
But I'm saying just the capital from the majority owners. I'm saying I'm taking the Wilfs.
Okay, I mean, yeah, but I don't know if Declan's take is specifically about who's richer. It's more like who's going to provide more winning and
winning, stability, morale, how the fans feel about their owners specifically, we're siloing those.
Yeah.
If we were to kind of like to quantify this, because it is a Write That Down Wednesday, Purple Daily and Mackey and Judd. If you were to say somehow maybe we can facilitate this through our podcast, an approval rating among the fan bases. Do you approve of, it's like the presidential approval rating, right? Do you approve of the job that Joe Biden's doing or whatever? Do you approve of the job that the Wilfs are doing as owners? Straight up yes or no approval rating.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, it's good.
I wonder what that percentage would be. It's pretty high, right? It's got to be well over 70%, maybe 80%.
Mm-hmm.
So could Lore and A-Rod eclipse like a 75 or 80%? No, they get a huge boost by just not being Glenn Taylor based on the reaction I have been seeing from friends.
Right. Well, the first day in office for those two, it's going to be very, very high. But then, 6 months in, the Wilfs have set a very high bar. They've done a lot of things. I think that one's going to be hard to surpass. And I wonder, what's a good question too? What's going to cause more excitement? The Glenn Taylor being out with the Wolves and Lore and A-Rod being in, or let's say Justin Ishbia gets the Twins? Because I think that pop is going to be enormous. I think there's a larger fan base tired of the poll ads because, to go back to what I said previously, I think the Wolves got so bad for so long that it just became apathy. There's always been an underlying hate, it feels like, for the poll ads. Yeah,
well, and also the Wolves are in a different spot the last 2 or 3 years because Anthony Edwards, the Gobert coming in as the anchor of this awesome defense the last couple of years. So in the twilight of Glenn's ownership run, the Wolves have been one of the better teams in the NBA, in large part because of some of the life that Lore and A-Rod and Tim Connolly breathed into this thing. So, but the Twins are sitting here on the way out for the poll ads, and it's like they've collapsed in 2 of the last 3 years in September, and
they've never been popular really for years and
the
years.
Poll
and
ads,
years. Yeah, that's 25 years now at least. Because the day that Carl, at least Glenn didn't offer his team up for contraction, which is damning him with faint praise. But the day that Carl basically said, okay, Bud Selig, fold my team.
I mean,
fans.
No matter what, and I still think it's ridiculous that that 30 years ago, Glenn Taylor prevented this team from moving to New Orleans, and so therefore he gets a pass to be largely an atrocious owner for the next 3 decades, and I hate that premise. But no matter what, Glenn Taylor, 30 years ago, prevented the Timberwolves from moving, and a couple years after that, Carl Pohlad tried to move the Twins.
Yeah, to death.
Or contract the Twins.
Yeah, he tried to kill him. He tried to put a fork in him.
Yeah. So, speaking of forks, Kieran's has food across the street from Target Center. Yeah.
You know what? I think here's what's going to happen. We'll get Lore and A-Rod and maybe just Ishbia with old Dex tweets. We can share a high top at Kieran's, okay? We can kick around these great ideas and approval ratings. And Wilfs, you can come too, so can you, Craig. We'll have a whole ownership plus Dex. I have no idea how I would find myself at that table. But if it's going to be at any table, it's going to be at Kieran's. They have great game day specials. They have great pub food as well. Go check out Kieran's. It's just steps away from the Target Center, pre-game, post-game. Go stop in at our friends at Kieran's across the street from the Target Center.
Also, Federated Insurance is here to help business owners. Whether you are a Minnesota-based business owner or you live somewhere outside the state of Minnesota, Federated is here to help you with risk management, safety, and preventing claims, rim protection, if you will, because you as a business owner deserve to be focused on the growth of your business, the pushing forward of your business, and that's where Federated comes in. Side-by-side, step-by-step, face-to-face relationships is another thing they pride themselves on. They create a customizable lineup of industry-specific coverages to help your business with risk management. You can find a full list of industries they specialize in at federatedinsurance.com. Remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours. All right, Joe, what is your hottest Timberwolves take here? There's a couple spicy ones here.
Okay, so
start this.
I'm going to stay on the path that Dex started. A little bit different, though. My hottest take is this. Cheap Plug 2 wrote extensively about this for the Zolgad Substack last night. The Timberwolves will not leave the state. The Timberwolves are not moving. The Timberwolves will, however, move to the suburbs and build an arena there.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, I was
Judd Zolgad.
Wow.
.substack.com.
We thought that was a tepid take at first, and then you brought part 2.
Yeah, well, but I'm saying people are afraid. The first question on the emergency flagrant episode that we did a couple of days ago, rightfully so, was, are they moving? Are they going to move? They're not going to move. They are going to stay, but they are not staying downtown. Let me explain. So between the two sides, at some point in time, and Phil knows as much or more about this than I do, the plan probably is still, to build on the farmers market site behind Target Field, very close to Target Center, but not on the footprint, okay? So I was doing some digging last night, because like the plan is, and it's on the record, Lori and A-Rod said, we plan to privately finance a building. Okay, that's great. But then I did some digging. Well, it's one thing to do that, and you can build it. That's awesome. But you got to get the land, and then you got to clean up the property. Like if there's any hazards, like that land has to be, you can't just like knock down an old building and build yours. You've got to go through a very expensive fee to get it to a place where you can even put a shovel in the ground to build the arena. So when the United wanted to build in the exact spot that the Wolves do, they basically went to the city and said, we need tax breaks. We need infrastructure help. We basically need, this can't be for free, but we will then build the stadium. And the city, I believe it was Mayor Betsy Hodges at the time, put up roadblocks and said, and it's not just her, it's the city. They're like, no, you're going to pay for it all. To which Bill McGuire, who owns the team, rightfully said, no, I'm not. I need help. And then he went and built in St. Paul, and I believe that they did get help to excavate that land, and then they built a stadium. So, long story short here, put the pieces together, okay? There are several suburbs that probably would love nothing more than to build a Timberwolves village, like you're talking about bringing in people to your restaurants. For the Timberwolves, if they get in at all feedback from the city that's not positive, somebody from the suburbs is going to say, if you move out here, you know what? It's going to be on land that has parking, and you're going to keep every $20 bill from the parking.
You can build like a Wolves Village or something.
Exactly.
Wolves, yeah.
And we can debate Eagan,
Timberwolves
Bloomington, around the mall, where the previous Met Sports Center and Stadium complex was. We can debate the where. But the reality is the Timberwolves... Duluth's a beautiful town. You know I love it. But the reality is this. The Timberwolves cannot exist in their current building. Target Center is a relic. It is the second oldest building in the entire league. But by the way, Madison Square Garden, which is the oldest, I believe it was a $1 billion improvement price tag in 2013, so it ain't old. This team needs a building. This team needs revenue streams, and we can bitch and moan about they're rich people, but guess what? Rich people don't get rich and stay rich, and also
it's not charity.
Exactly,
it's a business.
It's a business.
We're all adults.
Long story short, with the way that the city works, with the way that the city council board works, which has a huge say, more so than the mayor, I don't see any way that this team, while staying in Minnesota, doesn't move to the suburbs.
I know there's a lot of fans that would love a basketball arena if you live in the Western Burbs and all of a sudden there's a new arena in Maple Grove or something. There's a ton of space out there. It's probably way more convenient. As someone who loves to live more centrally located, I just love kind of a bustling sports scene downtown. You got it's a vibe.
Totally with you.
But I mean, hell, whatever it takes. They're not moving. They're not all this like Seattle and Vegas sort of fear mongering. The NBA wants the owners want those massive expansion fees.
Did you see the price tag?
Like
$7 billion a piece.
Right. And yes. And also, like, that's just the purchase price for an expansion team. Does that include the fees that go?
Doesn't include the arenas or that. No, it's a $7 billion entry fee. They ain't giving that up. You're right.
Yep. So yeah, I'd be curious to see a realistic list of suburbs. I mean, Bloomington's got space out there. I mean, Egan, obviously, with the Vikings facility. There's been talk, and the Maple Grove has popped up for different things in the past, and there's so much space between like Maple Grove and Brooklyn Center and that whole like 94 kind of 694 area. Maybe there's some other ones that we're not thinking of, but yeah, that's going to be a major
I don't want this
conversation topic.
I want them to stay. I want them to stay, but I just don't see like this whole thing of, because when we hear the term privately financed, I think we think, oh, they're going to do everything. They're not. They can't.
Yeah, well, there's got to be, in terms of like some tax breaks or whatever, there's definitely things to be figured out. But okay, some scintillating Wolves takes here today.
Some fastballs today, baby.
That's right. Yeah, that's Judd over there. Dex, I am Phil, and we'll see. I don't know. It's a 90-day window. I don't know if it's going to take all 90 days, but we'll see when this ownership thing gets wrapped up. If you missed our emergency episode a couple days ago, our State of the Wolves, there's all sorts of Flagrant Howls content. Plus, tomorrow, Kyle jumping back on, and Feedback Friday. This is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.